Hello, friends. My guest today is a brilliant young man on his way to getting a PhD in environmental science. He's also a musician and an artist and a really hilarious dude. I had only met him once or twice before this episode, but I had a great time talking with him, and I hope to get him back for another in the near future. Here he is, my friend, Schyler Reis. Yeah, so let's get on the time that you spent at Oxbow, because I forgot about that. But how long were you a ranger?
No, I wasn't a ranger. So it's kind of, I guess, to talk about Oxbow. So after high school, I tried college a couple times and didn't work out. Okay. And then I did band stuff and took that pretty seriously. Mm-hmm. But that started kind of, I guess, fizzling. And then my dad got sick, so I moved back home. And I was like, I have to get a job. So I got a job at this pizza place, Wall Street Pizza in Sandy. And the pizza delivery guy, we were kind of talking about like shitty jobs we'd had. And I was saying the shittiest job I ever had was being a newspaper delivery boy. That was like right before I moved out of Portland. And I was like, this fucking sucks. You got to wake up at like 2 a.m. Mm-hmm. And then you work for a couple hours and you don't get very much money.
Well, and you have to go door to door to collect, right?
I didn't have to do that, but I was not very good at throwing the newspaper. And I thought it'd be like that video game. You ride your bike, ride my car, and throw the newspaper up there. Yeah. And then after the first day, the boss was like, hey, do you some of these not get on their porch? I was like, oh, yeah, I threw them. I probably missed. He's like, well, you got to go back and put it on their porch. I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm down to chuck shit at people's door at 2 a.m., but if I have to go back,
yeah,
make sure there's a strike, I don't want to do it.
Well, yeah, because how much would you make a week?
I don't even know. I quit after the first day.
You did one day?
Yeah, one day. And
I've had some jobs like that.
So this other guy, Nick, was telling me his worst job. He's like, I worked at this place, Oxbow Park. You had to like be nice to the people there. You had to learn about all the plants and animals in case people had questions. They even made you hike every trail so you could know in case you had to like rescue someone who's lost. And then most of the time you're just hanging out on the beach by the river there picking up garbage. It's like, man, that sounds sweet. So I quit the pizza place and started working at Oxbow. And I loved it. I worked there. I think I only worked there two or three summers, because after my first summer there, I was like, this is cool. And you're just like this seasonal employee. And it was like my friend Nick said, like you hike around and you pick up garbage, micro litter. And then I asked the Rangers, like, how did you get your job? And they're like, well, we went to Mount Hood Community College for their tech program. So I was like, I'll go do that. I'll give school, try number 4 at school. And I really liked it. And then worked another summer at Oxbow and got like a bunch of friends from that program hired there too. And it was pretty sweet.
What was it like day to day working there? What did you have specific tasks you were supposed to accomplish?
Yeah, there was there are 2 shifts. There's either day shift or night shift. Day shift, I think you had to be there at 7 a.m., but it's pretty close to my parents' house. Day shift, you also worked with the lead ranger, Bill, who was nice, but like very neurotic, mm-hmm. and took things weirdly personal and kind of like got into your personal life and was like interested in you in a way that was just kind of like annoying.
Yeah.
I mean, I like Bill a lot, but also like I don't want to make this like small talk and then he'd be kind of judgmental and then kind of so I worked morning shift the first year and didn't get along with Bill very much. And then the next year I worked the afternoon shift and liked him. Mm-hmm. And then one of the main jobs is working the gate. So you let people in, and you tell them it's $5, and you say the speed limit's 15 miles per hour. Mm-hmm. And every other person says, 50 miles per hour?
Like a joke?
Yeah. It's just like, fuck. This is not, like, it's weird because I make those jokes to people, and I think I'm so clever.
Yeah.
And then when you're on the other end of it.
Yeah. No, every time I go to get my hair cut, I think about that. I'm like, am I saying the exact same thing the last 20 people said to this person?
Make me look like a douche?
No, just like, how many haircuts did you give today?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You don't look like a douche. I'm just kidding. But so maybe a third of the time you're in that booth, and that was boring. But the good thing is there's always lazy people you work with, and they wanted to do the booth.
Yeah.
Because it's just like you just sit there.
Yeah.
And then you do bathroom cleanup. And speaking of doing something and then being on the receiving end, I'll tell you this story. There's a lot of people that for some reason shit in the showers at campgrounds. Like every weekend at least, somebody takes a shit in the shower. And they call it, we had a code because we didn't want to go over the radio. Like somebody shit in.
Brown team go.
It was a Camp Brownies.
Camp Brownies in the shower.
But I never got it, but because it'd be like they were there, and it didn't seem like a prank. It seemed like they just shit in the shower.
Like maybe they were taking a shower and they couldn't make it in time. They're just like, well, I'm already here.
Or I imagine like they're like, I always wanted to shit in the shower, but I didn't want to clean up my own shower.
Yeah. Good thing I'm at Oxbow. Somebody else will take care of it.
Yeah, and there was always like a cigarette by it, and it's just like you're...
It's like shower beer, but
yeah,
shit in a smoke.
But
well, maybe it was Bill. He was just trying to get back at you.
No, I did need to get back. I needed revenge on myself, and I'll tell you this story, and then I'll decide if it's. I think it's good. When I was like 13 or 14, we went down to Santa Cruz, California, to camp with my aunt and uncle, my cousins, and I have a cousin who's like my age. He's my step cousin. We didn't kind of didn't like each other. This campground sucked. It was a KOA. So it's like just for RVs. There's like some fields and it's like a big parking lot. And it's probably nice if you live in some big city in California. But being in Oregon, it's like there's better places in my backyard than this. So being like 13 or 14, me and my cousin are like trying to sneak beers, trying to sneak cigarettes, trying to get into mischief to like, I don't know, impress each other. Mm-hmm. So I told him, have you ever heard of this thing, the upper decker? And he's like, what's that? And I'm like, well, you go into somebody's bathroom, you take the lid off the toilet, you shit into the tank, and then when they take a shit, when they flush, a turd flushes in to the toilet, and they're like, what?
No way.
So we're like, yeah, let's go do this. So we, kind of go to the bathroom around midnight or 2, when no one's going to be around. And these are just industrial bathrooms. There's just a toilet with a tube going into it. Mm-hmm. There's no tank. Mm-hmm. We can't shit into it. So I have this idea. Let's go into the shower. And I'm going to unscrew the cap where the water comes out. Mm-hmm. I'm going to shit into that. And when somebody turns it on, they're going to get sprayed with like diarrhea, essentially. And he's like, yes, let's do it. So, nobody's there in the bathroom. We go into the shower. It's already a fucking giant shit on the ground. And we're like, oh, fuck. And it's just so gross. We're just like, I don't want to do this.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Mission abort.
Yeah. We're gross. That's just even seeing a shit in a shower is bad.
Okay, so then you know who's doing it at Oxbow. Some 13-year-old kids.
Well.
Trying to impress each other.
Maybe. But some of them are pretty huge. Like bigger than I can even take now. So
well, it reminds me of, I can't remember if we talked about this on the episode with Farger and Pondo, but Pondo used to work at Francis Xavier's, which is 181st and San Rafael.
Okay.
It's kind of like a fancy Denny's. Mm-hmm. He used to work there, and he'd have to go clean the bathrooms. And he said that not frequently, but often, he'd go in the women's bathroom to clean it, and there'd be panties filled with shit that had been stuffed in the tampon thing.
Yeah.
So, like, I don't know, man. I think if you're taking care of business at a family establishment, like, it's probably an emergency, and you can't really, you're not just going there to take care of business. Like, it's a pressing matter.
This is reminding me of another prank I sort of did. I don't know if this is a prank, but in 6th grade, I realized it was cool to wear boxers and not briefs. Did you have a transition like that?
Oh, yeah.
And I knew I wanted to wear boxers, but I didn't like the way they felt. Mm-hmm. But I wanted people to think I was cool. Mm-hmm. So I'd wear briefs with boxers over them.
Yeah.
And one time, I fucking shit my pants. And I go to the bathroom, and I just take my underwear off with, the shit in it, the shart material, and I throw it into the toilet, and I try to flush it, and it doesn't flush.
No.
But I have my boxers on still. So then I go back into the classroom, and I get my friends. I'm like, come check this Come check this out.
Look what some kid did.
Yeah, and I'm like, look, somebody shit their pants and tried to flush it, and it wasn't me because I'm wearing underwear.
Oh, man. That's brilliant.
Yeah, and then from then on, I had to go through the day with just boxers, and I could wear them from then on.
That was the transition. You never wore brief skin.
Yeah. That's how it works, I guess.
Oh, man, that's great. That's great. So up at Oxbow, you're taking care of all this shenanigans daily. I was wondering, how often did you have people freak out on you?
Ooh. We had probably every weekend there's a freak out, and but there are some really weird characters that come in.
Yeah.
So for all your 70 listeners,
it's like 20.
Okay, some people are listening to this, I guess, for a second time right now. Then, Oxbow's right on the edge of Gresham, and we kind of had this saying that when the temperature reached 100, that was also the max IQ for anybody that could come in, and we would get some really strange people that were there. I don't know, tripping out, got kicked out of their house, meth people. One of the weirdest things I ever saw was two brothers came camping. Each brought their girlfriend. It was the same girl. That's when they figured out that their girlfriend was cheating on them with the other brother.
That's what it took, was going to Oxbow to figure that out, huh?
Yeah, and so they got in an axe fight. So I had to call it in on the radio, and the police had to come.
Jesus.
And, we had some violent stuff. There was some guy that got mad at some girls, a group of young women, because they were playing with his beach ball or something. His beach ball had blown down the beach, and they started playing with it, and he got mad at them. And then they got their boyfriends to come, beat the crap out of this guy and, bash his head in with a rock, and he got life flighted out of there.
Oh, my God.
So, but we'd mostly get people that were mad because they couldn't bring their pets in.
Yeah.
And
so what was the criteria for keeping somebody from coming in? Could you just say, you look a little sketchy, you're not coming in today?
I don't think I could. The rangers there are, I want to say ordained ministers, but that's not what it is. It's deputy sheriffs or whatever.
Same thing.
So, yeah. So they can kick people out and they can write tickets and stuff.
Yeah.
And it's weird. You get some people, teenagers down there with Lamborghinis, and that was strange. Or you get people that try to camp in definitely not the designated camping areas.
Somebody drove a Lamborghini?
A lot. You'd get some. It's interesting, some of the money that's around that I'm not in my pocket. But
yeah, dude. There's some bad potholes on the way out there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it's just I don't know. I guess if you're from Vancouver or whatever, it seems like a nice place to drive your Lamborghini. And
what about, so I imagine in the summertime, it's way busier. Probably a lot more drunken people out there on the water. Did you have to save anybody's life? Were people drowning all the time?
It seems like maybe every year there'd be somebody that would drown. And it was usually earlier in the season.
Yeah.
So the thing about that Sandy River, right, is it comes off of a glacier on Mount Hood. So as soon as it gets 80 or 90 around here, people think, I'm going to go swimming.
Yeah. And
they jump in, and that's actually when the Sandy River is the coldest because it's just melted.
Yeah.
And it's all, since it's glacier melt, it's full of, colloidal minerals. So it's if you go to the Sandy River in the winter, it's pretty clear. But in the summer, it gets kind of a milky look because it's all, the glacier goes down the mountain and it crushes all these rocks. And they're floating, suspended in the water. And that's why I think the river feels really good on your skin. It replenishes you maybe, but it makes visibility really low.
There's also some pretty quick currents, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it was there's quicksand. I don't know if that contributes too much to the drowning, but that was the original name of the river when Lewis and Clark came. They called it the Quicksand River. So
Wow, because it just comes right out from underneath you, huh?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there's some places if you go downstream from Oxbow where you can find active quicksand. And I used to go with friends, and we'd go like get in the quicksand.
That's hardcore, dude. I thought it was just in Disney cartoons. Quicksand is real, huh?
Yeah, and it's just like this stuff isn't like you just fall in it, but you're like walking on it, and I think it's called a non-Newtonian liquid is the name for it. But like if you stomp on it, it's solid, but if you stand there and kind of wiggle your feet, you suck down into it. Like I don't know if you've ever played when you were a kid with like cornstarch and water.
Yeah.
And it's like that.
Okay.
But we never got like too trapped, but it's kind of fun. It's kind of like, I don't know if you do any spelunking, cave exploring.
I've heard that term, but I don't know what it is.
Well, it's just like going in caves. And for me, I'm not like big into it, but it's kind of thrilling if you go to like into it as like and try to cram yourself into the cave.
Dude, that's not for claustrophobic people at all.
Yeah. So I think,
as you go further, it gets tighter and tighter.
yeah, and then to where you have to like back out. I don't know. There's something kind of comforting about that to me for some reason. I don't, and why I like to go into quicksand. Huh. I don't know.
Maybe you're just dangerous.
Yeah, or not. Maybe it's the opposite. Like I need to artificially manufacture some sort of slow, safe danger.
Yeah, maybe.
Like I don't like to go fast in a car. I mean, plenty of people do that, and I hate that. So.
Yeah, maybe you're a thrill seeker, but in a slow-moving manner.
The slow thrills. Yeah, sounds good. I'll take that.
So you worked there for 2 summers?
I think so, and then I got a job since I was doing the BLM, or I was doing the tech program. They had a interview with the Bureau of Land Management down in Eugene, and I interviewed and I got the job. So then I didn't work at Oxbow anymore, but I had to live down in Eugene for the summer, and did that for a few years too, which was fun also. But I mean, working at Oxbow is great. Like anybody that is, early 20s and wants something to do, I think that's like, it's like working at a camp. It's like one of those camp movies kind of.
Yeah. But it seems pretty chill. And you get to hang out outside. You get to see people.
Mm-hmm. You get to find people who have their dogs that snuck them in and be like, give me some of your barbecue or I'll tell on you.
Was that the trade? I want some ribs or I'm telling.
Yeah. That stuff like that could happen theoretically. Mm-hmm. I'm like,
did you ever show up and you're like, hey, what's going on, guys? It's like a group of like 20-somethings. And they're like, hey, man, why don't you come drink with us? Come hang out. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, of course. Yeah. I mean, what do like you're going to pick up garbage anyway. So it's, and you're the face of the park. So you want to be friendly and you want to be affable. And like, it's rude to turn down a beer, I think.
Sure. Well, you just take off your shirt and then they can't tell you work there anymore.
Yeah, we would do that. Like after work, we would do that for sure. But the weirdest thing I think about that place is how many parents leave just dirty diapers on the side of the river.
Yeah.
Like I don't get it. Like I would think if you became a parent, you'd be more responsible. Mm-hmm. But these people would just every day, you'd find like 10 dirty diapers.
Yeah.
It's like, why don't you pick up your kids' diapers?
Yeah. Like, why is that the thing you leave? I guess because it's stinky.
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to pick up a diaper either, but I got paid to and I had a bucket and a litter picker.
Yeah.
So, but I don't know. It's gross.
Yeah. Those early 20s jobs, man, those are where it's at, where like what you said, where you quit that job in a day. Mm-hmm. I had a job. I got hired at Bellagio's Pizza and they hired me basically on the spot and they're like, come in tomorrow. It'll be your first day. Well, the next day was Rockfest. And all my friends were like, fuck that, dude. Don't go to your job. Let's go to Rockfest. And I was like, okay, fuck it. Hey, guys, I'm not coming to work today. I quit. They're like, it's your first day. I'm like, well, I was 22. Who cares?
Yeah, it's like the newspaper boy I was, I mean, if it sucks, don't do it. Who played that Rockfest? Who was the headliner?
The headliner, I think it was Slipknot. Stone Temple Pilots. It was that era. It was like 2001. So I forget, but there were 2 stages and like probably 30 bands. It was totally worth it.
Yeah. You can get another pizza job.
Exactly. I probably could have called them the next day and been like, hey, I changed my mind. I want the job.
Yeah. You got to go in with a fake mustache.
Yeah.
My name's
Esteban.
Jody Maxwell.
Yeah. Yeah, that would work.
Yeah. Sweet.
Yeah. So did you discover that was what you enjoyed, was being outside and working in nature?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I got to give Oxbow a lot of credit for where I am now and what I'm doing. Well, my dad, he was a research forester, and that's kind of what I'm loosely am now. And part of me wishes he would have been like following the family footsteps, and then I could have saved myself, 7 years of not knowing what I wanted to do. But then also I probably would have rebelled against that also.
I don't know, man. In my opinion, there's a strong, God, I can't think of the word, push towards trying to figure out what you are or what you like right out of high school. Mm-hmm. The fact that you are supposed to know what you want to go study in college and drop $100,000. No, I don't know anyone that knows what they want to do when they're 18 years old.
I know one person.
Yeah?
I knew this kid that I knew in kindergarten. And he wanted to be a chemist. That's it. I want to be a chemist. Always, that's what he told everybody. And now he's a chemist. He's also a weird religious kid. So he works at a Christian university as a chemistry teacher, runs a lab, and his lab specializes in developing new chemical methods for detecting drugs at airports.
Science and religion don't really go together.
Yeah, I don't think so. And he's also like a professional narc creator or whatever.
What?
And he's like anti-COVID on Facebook. And it's really weird. So when COVID happened, right, I kind of felt alone and trapped. And so I started reaching out to people that I didn't know.
Yeah.
And I hadn't talked to in a while that I knew. And I told this guy this story, like, hey, you're the only person I've ever known that knew what they wanted to do. And I kind of sometimes use you on like essays when I have to write about like, why should we accept you to this program or whatever? I'll be like, my life has been like a meandering river, and here's why. That's why I want to study rivers or something, And then I talk about this guy, and then I don't know. I think he's really I don't know. He's lame.
That's impressive. From kindergarten, he knew. That's like a kid growing up and becoming a firefighter, or an astronaut.
Kids want to be a firefighter or astronaut.
I know, but nobody ever continues to do it.
Yeah, and I don't know. Chemistry sucks. I mean, it's interesting, but it's not what I like, and it's really boring and sterile, and it's not. He's helping people bust people for having drugs at an airport, which seems like a really BS job to me.
Yeah. There's better things to do, like make meth in a trailer.
Yeah, I mean I guess maybe that's like the antithesis of him, but so he posted this thing on Facebook I thought was really bad because that I think is kind of unethical as a scientist. Mm-hmm. He was talking about flattening the curve, right? That's what people want to do with COVID. Mm-hmm. Flatten the curve, keep the rate down, make it so the hospitals don't fill up so people don't die when they get sick so much. Sorry, you have to wear a mask. It's really not that inconvenient compared to dying because the hospital's full. I mean, think about how shitty that would be. Like, we could save you, but there's no beds, right? So then he wrote this thing about how if you plot infection rates, if you do a log transformation, which is like if you have the log scale, instead of going like from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4, you have a graph and you plot it from 1. Then the next tick mark is 10. And then the same distance is 100. Then the same distance is 1,000. So basically it takes something that's exponential and makes it look like a straight line.
Yeah.
And then he's like, well, if you plot it this way, the curve gets flat so we kind of did flatten the curve sort of thing. And it's like, that is such like bullshit disinformation. And he kind of worded it to where he's like, but really I'm just using this as an opportunity to explain to people about log scale. It's like, yeah, no, you're not. You're trying to cater to the people that believe that COVID measures are, I don't know, wrong or whatever they're doing.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that's the issue with everything that's going on right now is it became political and everybody has some sort of story they're trying to tell.
Mm-hmm.
And it's confirmation bias. It's taking information that makes you right and pushing it that direction to try to influence other people. And dude, that's the most disappointing thing about everything that's going on right now. And for the last 5 years, really, is like, I don't think anyone knows who to trust on anything. You can't. It seems like there's no real source of true information, unbiased.
Yeah. It definitely, there are forces at work to either A, create a bunch of biased information, or B, make people think that they can't trust anything. There's a pretty interesting documentary called Merchants of Doubt.
Okay.
And it's based on originally it was the PR firm that backed Big Tobacco like in the 60s or something like that. And they realized that they really couldn't successfully prove that tobacco didn't cause cancer or that tobacco was safe for you. But they realized if they could create enough disinformation out there, they could confuse enough people to where the result was the same as if they had proved it.
Sure.
So if you muddy the waters enough and then talk loud enough, you can kind of either get your way. And that usually seems to work if you already are the status quo. Mm-hmm. And it's the same PR firm now that like represents fossil fuel industries and things like that,
sure,
promoting climate change denial and stuff. And I mean, I see people all the time, especially older people, where they're like, yeah, but on the news, so a big issue they have like on the news, they'll have somebody talking about climate change and they'll have a climate change denier. Mm-hmm. And that kind of presents the argument that it's like a 50-50 argument to try to figure out. But every single expert, not even 95% of the experts, but all of them know that climate change is attributed to it's human caused.
Yes, it's inevitable. I mean, there will be warming, there will be cooling. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's been a number of ice ages over the course of the history of the universe.
Yeah.
But yeah, according to everything I've ever read, you cannot disprove the fact that humans are accelerating it. And to try to deny that is just ridiculous. But I see what you're saying. Like, it'd be like if you had a debate with somebody who believed the earth was round and a flat earther. Uh-huh. It's like, just because that's a theory doesn't mean it has the same... It can't sit on the same ground as trying to prove that the earth is round.
Yeah.
It's like, what the fuck are we talking about here?
Man, those flat earthers. So those flat earthers, it seems like that's part of a bigger, just wider anti-science kind of agenda that's being pushed right now. But what's interesting to me about climate change denial is, so I go to U of O now, and I've been there 5 years because I'm getting my PhD and it takes a long time. But there's all those student booths that are out there, and there's the Young Republicans Club, and I like to go there and give them shit for fun because it's fun, right? I mean, I stopped now; it got scarier, but there's one other guy. Like they had a very vocal guy. I think he was the president. And he was like their MAGA hat guy, and he's like really obnoxious, being a troll. And a couple interesting things I got from talking to those young Republicans is the other young Republicans didn't like that guy. Like they're like, we like these other guys. He's a jerk, blah, blah, blah. But the thing that was interesting about him, I was asking him about climate change, and he's like, we know climate change is happening. We just don't care. And it's easier for us to say that we don't think it's happening because it makes you guys mad. And it kind of moves the argument into an area we can win as opposed to it being about us not caring.
Yeah.
It's about we get you to try to prove to us that it's real, and we know it's real, but we can just play dumb and argue. So they're not arguing in good faith, but I actually like commend that guy for giving me some
being
insight.
honest.
Yeah. Because then it sort of makes a little more sense. Like,
yeah, it's about creating conflict and making it my team versus yours. Everybody wants to be on a team.
Yeah, people like teams.
People like teams.
It's in human nature, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Like that's how we became, how we conquered the planet.
Yeah,
was by being on teams and beating the Neanderthals or whatever.
Yeah, and there's a lot of evidence for pushing someone that was different or someone that upset the tribe, pushing them outside and making them feel that loneliness and that disconnect. Because if you're by yourself, you're going to get eaten by a cheetah.
Yeah.
You know? You need the warmth and the comfort and the security of the group. And so nobody wants to be the outsider. Mm-mm. You want to be included somehow. And that's what sucks, man. It's like there's so much more nuance and subtlety in all these things that everyone's discussing. But you have to say, I'm on Team Water, and then everything that encompasses Team Water, you instantly ascribe to that theory. Like you can't.
Yeah, I think there is kind of a circling of the wagons kind of thing that happens, right? Where I know I've seen a thing where they show it's like an infographic GIF about how lawmakers have worked together across party lines. So you have like this picture and you got everybody that's a Republican, everybody that's a Democrat, and it kind of goes through the years. And then anytime people write a law together, it shows a line between them. And at first it's pretty clumped, but there's all sorts of lines going across. And as we've gone through the last 50 years, we've just started coalescing and people aren't working together at all.
Yeah. And there's more of a fuck you, at least in American Congress, where like, this is what we're doing and fuck the other team. We're in power. We're going to make sure we do it our way.
Yeah, definitely. And it's strange because I know, that's how, if we don't do anything, stuff still gets done, right? It's just like not beneficial for us because we're regular people.
Yeah.
It's like, over COVID or whatever, I've read there's like 100 new billionaires or something for that. It's like, how did these people make so much money off of this crisis? And then and then they're arguing about giving us, $1,500 or something like that. It's like, you like there's people that got, tens of billions of dollars.
Yeah.
And it's crazy.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I'm not the biggest like political expert, so.
Yeah. Well, I don't know that you have to be. Everybody's got an opinion, and maybe your opinion's not right. The disappointing thing is just when people refuse to be open-minded about things and be willing to change or say, hey, you know what? Like that thing that Trump did in June of 2019, that was a cool thing. You can't there's no
yeah, see though, but the thing is, like, I don't want to hear it. I don't. It's strange, right? I'm guilty of that as well. Like, I get annoyed if somebody I know that is like pretty aligned with what I think will be like, oh, I'm glad Trump fought against this Chinese 5G company, and I'll be like, why are you bringing that? There's 100. You want to talk about him? Get through the 100 bad things he did first. But.
Yes, that doesn't eliminate the fact that he was a piece of shit and he ruined a million things. But you have to give credit where credit is due. And the same thing's going to happen with Biden. Biden is going to be responsible for a bunch of awesome stuff. He's going to do a bunch of horrible stuff too. And the right is going to shit on all of it, no matter what. You got to give credit where credit is due. That doesn't mean that you agree with that person and you support them, but you got, like, if Trump had taken $10 billion of his dollars, his personal money, and like bought cans of food and given them to Africa, the left still would have been like, he's a fucking monster, you know?
Oh, yeah, because then, of course, you get into some arguments about how that like would undermine Africa's own food production or something like that.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying.
I know there's a thing like, how we give all they print out the Super Bowl shirts for either winner. And then the team that lost, all those stuff gets shipped to Africa, and they say that's why they don't have like any sort of textile company over there.
Is that real?
Yeah, because they get a lot of free, crappy clothes from us, so there's really no incentive for people to start their own business where they're going to make their own clothes.
So if you go to some third world country, Africa or something, there's a bunch of T-shirts with the loser from the Super Bowl.
Yeah, it'll say like Bills 2021 or whatever. That's my prediction, at least.
I don't watch football, so I don't even know.
Yeah, I don't know. Sports seem kind of boring recently to me.
It's weird. I used to watch NFL games just because I like talking shit to my friends who actually care. And I'd always just be a fan of the Patriots. And,
yeah, me too.
Yeah, and I just a fucking,
it's the
give it to them.
troll move.
Yeah, because everybody hates the Patriots. But this year, I've not watched one single game. So I don't even know what the stadium looks like. Is it similar to basketball where there's nobody there?
I think I don't know. Because I know at some college games, they have some people. Mm-hmm. And I watch that a little bit more since, I don't know, I care about it more, I guess, living in Eugene. But
yeah, they're hardcore about sports in Eugene, right?
It's fun.
The whole Ducks versus Beavers.
Well, I did my master's and my undergrad at OSU, so I'm a Beaver and a Duck.
Oh man, everybody wants to kill you.
I have to make compromises.
You're Judas.
I'll be Ducks basketball, Beavers football, Ducks baseball.
Yeah,
that's how we do it.
Do you have hats and shirts and sweatshirts and everything?
I have a green vest.
Yeah,
but I went to a lot of basketball games the last couple of years, and it was really fun. And something I found out is you could get a beer, and it's like $9 for a beer, or you can get a soda, refillable, giant soda, $6, and then sneak in your own booze. Mm-hmm. And so I found these things they're called like a torpedo tube, and they're used for. You put them in a centrifuge to separate DNA from something. And a friend of mine had a bunch of them left over from a lab that they worked in. And each one holds an exact shot. And so I'd put whiskey in them, put them in my pocket, and then I'd write like urine sample, the pig urine sample, 64201 or whatever. So if I ever got caught, I'd be like, oh, I came from the lab. I've left my pig urine samples.
Yeah.
Here, let me just take care of that real quick. And then drink it.
Oh my God.
Yeah, but it's like great because you could go get a soda, put a couple of those in there, drink that, and then at halftime get a refill and do it again and get the crowds are crazy. And they're even crazier for the women's basketball team.
Really?
Well, the women's basketball team last year beat the U.S. Nationals team. Huh. There was a good chance last year Ducks men's and women's basketball were going to be national champions. And stupid coronavirus took that away from me.
Do you know that I don't know where they're at, but they canceled the Olympics and then they didn't cancel them?
I heard about that.
Yeah.
But they did that last summer too, so.
Yeah, but man, that's so brutal. Can you imagine being in the prime of your physical life between like 15 and 22?
What do you mean? Look at me.
I know, we look great.
Yeah, this is prime. It's like, I thought you were Arnold with a picture of Maxwell on your shirt.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, it got kind of the same look a little bit.
Yeah, a little crazy. Yeah, man, to be in that position right now, I feel really bad for, especially Olympic athletes, but like high school kids who were either seniors last year or seniors this year. Like they're supposed to be out performing for the greatest high school year of their life physically, to get scouts to pick them up and take them on to these, to get scholarships to colleges. And I don't even know how any of that is working out right now.
I mean, I see it a lot more with like the undergrads because my job is, I'm called a GE, graduate employee. So I'm like a TA, I guess. So I teach labs or run discussion sections or do grading. And there's students where it's like, man, I get 4 years of college and I lost one of them. Mm-hmm. It's all online classes. That sucks. And not everybody can go to school for 12 years like I have. Like most people go for 4 or 5 and that's the time of their life. And to get a quarter of that taken away, it seems pretty tough.
Yeah.
But
Well, yeah. So explain that. You said you went to OSU, and then now you're at U of O. But you're still taking classes, or you're just teaching?
I'm done with classes. So I did Mount Hood. I did a tech program there, Natural Resource Technologies and Forestry, and that kind of sets you up to be like a ranger or like a BLM technician, layout crew kind of guy.
And what does that mean?
That means like you go out, the forester has a prescription, they're going to log this area, and they need people to mark out the boundaries of it and mark out what trees are too big to get cut down. And
is that when they put the tape around the tree to let you know they're going to chop it?
Yeah, stuff like that. So you get like a map and you go kind of make it happen. You like fulfill what's on the map. Mostly it's putting out the boundaries, what I did. But I really liked that schooling so much. I was like, I'm going to go to OSU for undergrad. I'm going to keep going. So I did a program called Bioresource Research is what it was. And my specialty was sustainable ecosystems. And that program, you have to do a undergrad project. So you go around and you ask these different teachers, hey, can I do a project for you? And I found this guy, Boone Kaufman. He was my advisor, and Dr. Lisa Ellsworth. And she's like, I have a program down at Heart Mountain National Antelope Refuge, and we're going to be looking at post-fire stuff. And here's a little side project you can do. And I noticed on the map, it's right by this sunstone mine. I don't know if you know about Oregon sunstones, but it's the Oregon State gemstone, and it's the second shiniest gem next to a diamond. They're really cool. And I was like, can we stop at this gemstone mine on the way? And they're like, yeah, if you do our project, we'll let you stop at the gemstone mine. So I did that project. I loved it. Stayed on with them to do my master's at OSU, doing kind of, I was measuring post-fire fuel recovery. Okay. So in the sagebrush, used to burn really often. It varies depending on the species. But in when Euro-American settlers came in the West, we put out every fire. So now, the plants that grow there, the fuels build up, and now when there's a fire, it doesn't happen in the same way as it used to. So I measured after a fire, how it grows back, what happens if it burns again, kind of things like that. And then we modeled
Well, can you explain that a little bit? Because it's always explained that fires are really, really horrible, but it's actually good for the environment, right? Because it regrows.
Yeah. Everything around here, I don't know if you'd say evolved or developed to be in a system with fire. And we're learning more and more about it almost every day, really. Those fires that happened in the gorge a couple years ago, everybody's like, oh no, it's this beautiful area that burned down. It grows back.
Yeah.
A big problem can be if you go too long without a fire.
Yeah.
After it burns, either there's so much fuel that the fire is a lot hotter. It's outside of what's called the natural, the historic range of variation. So, it makes sense, right? You have more fuel in your bonfire. It's going to be hotter and bigger. And what can happen is if you have enough plants that grow and they'll suppress the understory plants. Okay. So there's no seeds, and those were the plants maybe that come back after fire, but they're all gone. So it burns and it creates kind of this vacuum, and then that's when invasive species can come in. So around here, the west side, they say there was a big fire, like a stand replacing fire every 100 to 300 years, and it would burn the whole forest down, and then it would grow back. And you'd get Doug fir at first, and the Doug firs, they can drop their limbs. So when a fire comes through, it can't reach the top of the tree, and it would just burn the understory. They have the thick bark. It protects them.
The tree knows that everything's on fire, and it lowers its branches.
Oh, no. The tree itself, just how it grows, the lower branches fall off.
Oh, gotcha.
So say, we play like Wisest Wizard. It's like, say the fire can go this high when it burns. If a tree has limbs on it, it can catch those, and they're called ladder fuels, and they create a crown fire.
Okay.
But Doug firs, they drop their limbs, and they're protected from fire. But there's a tree called the western hemlock that can grow in the shade. And after Doug firs can't grow in the shade. So they grow up, they shade everything out, more Doug firs can't grow because they need open light, really. But the hemlock comes in, and it doesn't drop its limbs. So when it comes in and kind of catches up to the Doug fir, then when that catches on fire, the whole forest will burn down.
It burns all the hemlock, but leaves the Doug fir alone.
It burns the Doug fir, too, because it creates the ladder fuel.
Okay.
Because, like, the hemlock have the ladder,
okay.
I guess.
Gotcha.
But Doug fir seedlings like the open light and they like bare mineral soil. Western hemlock seedlings don't. So then Doug fir comes in, it grows up, suppresses its own seedlings. Hemlock come in, they grow up, create the ladder fuels, and fire burns it all down. And that's kind of the natural cycle that they think happened. But that's also oversimplification.
Not for my stupid brain.
Well, I think what they're finding out is that, like, Native Americans actually set a lot more fires, and it's more complex than that, and there probably wasn't, like...
They purposely set fires because they knew it was important to wipe everything out and let it regrow.
And also, like, you have an open meadow after a fire. That's where your game likes to hang out.
Sure.
It's easier to get around. But a lot of, like, the Willamette Valley, if you have fires, then you have an oak savanna, and acorns are, like, delicious to deer, so you have a lot more deer, and you have a lot better hunting areas and stuff. But... Oh, yeah. So then, because of that, they say, well, this forest burns down completely. That's how they justify, like, clear cutting. They'll say, like, this kind of mimics the natural cycle that happens in nature. But they clear cut every 50 years, where maybe the fires happened every 100 to 300 years. So it's not exactly the same cycle. So
you're saying that clear cutting is not a great thing to do? It's still detrimental to the environment, even though you're planting new seedlings?
So this gets into a little debate of what you're supposed to say as a scientist. So to say something is, like, great or not is what's called normative language, where you're giving a value to something. What I will say, some scientists say you can't ever do that. Environmental scientists, which is what I am now, say you have to do that because we know this stuff and we have to advocate against climate change. But what I'm going to say right now is clear cutting, as it is right now, doesn't mimic the natural cycle as much as advocates for clear cutting would say it does.
Okay. So if they figured out a different way to utilize other elements or other materials and they didn't need wood as often, they would just leave the forest alone and things would be better? What if they built everything out of steel or whatever? Well,
steel, I guess the problem with that would be, where do you get your power to forge the steel? Does it come from renewable resources or using, a coal power plant? Because if it comes down to that, it's probably better to harvest the wood. Another thing is, like, harvested wood, you cut a tree down, put it into a building. If you keep that building for 100 years, that's stored carbon that you have. And then if you grow the trees back, that's sequestering carbon right there. So I don't think, there's a lot of evidence to say old growth forests are going to be more resilient to climate change because they just naturally, the structure of the forest keeps it cooler. So it's going to be able to resist, like, super hot temperatures that are going to happen or droughts and things like that. So they're important, and they're also important because they're like habitat for some certain species that can only live there. But, I mean, if we're really going to talk about climate change, I don't want to take any cards off the table about what has to be done. I mean, and there's plenty of people I know who want to automatically remove half the cards. And there's a lot of other people who want to remove the other half. But I think we got to address it any way we can.
It's a complicated topic.
Yeah, I think it's probably the most complicated, especially when you get into, like, human aspects of it. I think it's probably the most complicated topic on the whole planet.
Okay, so back into climate change. And before we get into that stuff, like, what I went to the Redwoods last summer for, I guess, the second time, but, like, really paid attention. And
which ones?
We went to, it's just north of McKinleyville.
So is it just in very northern California?
I want to say Arcata.
Yeah, I think that's. I did some field work there.
Okay, so there's a tourist trap off of 101 or I believe it's 101, where it's got like Babe the Blue Ox.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I took a picture. I was actually dressed up like, what's his name?
Paul Bunyan?
Paul Bunyan. Just happenstance.
Yeah.
And then I bought some Paul Bunyan socks, and they gave me a rash. So.
Oh, okay. So don't buy socks from that gift shop.
Don't do field work in polyester socks.
Oh, gotcha.
That'd be my advice.
Okay. Well, yeah, we went there, and all shit talking aside, it was pretty cool. I mean, they have some nice paths, some decent plaques that explain the trees you're looking at, and then this really cool treetop walk around, with a bunch of bridges and stuff to go in between the trees. And it was fascinating, man, just being in that environment and seeing those trees, those enormous redwood trees. And I remember reading one of the plaques that said something about basically to the effect of those sequoias, I believe is what they were. No?
If you were at the place I think you are, I don't think they're sequoias.
Okay, maybe I'm wrong on that.
The sequoias, I think, are inland, and there's the coastal redwoods versus the sequoias.
Whatever the species was, it basically said that they were fireproof. Not 100%, but that the bark somehow was fire retardant. Mm-hmm. And I may be explaining this wrong.
No, you're totally right.
But that blew my mind, because that makes total sense that they would grow to be 100 feet in circumference and 300 feet tall. There's no way for anything that is a living creature that is suspect to fire damage to get that big unless they could somehow have some sort of magical force field.
Yeah. I mean, if you see those trees, I mean, they're as big as this room, right?
They're enormous,
and their bark, it's like a giant wet sponge.
Yeah.
That's a meter thick almost. So when I was down there, I was actually helping out a colleague of mine for her master's work, and she was trying to figure out how often those fire came through the redwoods. So it's exactly what you're talking about. And it's tough to study things of that size and that kind of time scale, and there's not much of the forest left. I mean, they've cut a lot of it down. Luckily, those redwood trees, when they're that big, it's kind of impossible to harvest them without, if they fall down, the wood all shatters. So people don't really cut ones that are that size down to turn them into decks or anything like that. So that's kind of what protects them. But
that'd be so fucked up.
I mean,
chop one down to make yourself a new deck.
Grow them for 100 years, and then cut them down and make an amazing deck out of them, right? I mean, redwood people love it for decks.
Probably because it's rare and you don't see it very often, which makes it more valuable.
Light too, and it's rot resistant and insect resistant too. But so how we tried to measure the age of the redwoods was we were doing these soil cores where you take this this hollow piston, and you jam it into the ground, and it kind of cuts like a cylinder into the soil. Then you twist it and pull it up, and you get this core. And then you kind of find pieces of charcoal in it, and you can kind of date how old the charcoal is using radiocarbon dating. And then you kind of try to figure out, you do 20 of those across the stand, and you try to see if there's deposits of carbon at certain depths that have corresponding ages that would make that you would hypothesize got there from a big fire coming through. But I think what really complicated it is when a redwood dies, just naturally, when it falls over, it just rips up all the soil and just turns it all. So it seemed like there wasn't very reliable patterns of just here was a fire, 6 inches down, there's a bunch of charcoal everywhere, and we know that happened 700 years ago. And then another 6 inches down or whatever, there's another layer with a lot of charcoal, and the charcoal is this old, and then they can get kind of an idea of how often it would burn. Well,
so what's the ultimate method to figure out how old it is? Is it just counting the rings? Like if you could just chop it down and count the rings and then put it back and everything's fine?
You talking dendrochronology?
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's totally what I'm talking about.
Well, that reminds me of, there's a pretty funny Gary Larson cartoon where there's these two guys looking at this giant log. And the one guy saying to the other guy, like, here's another instance where this tree miraculously survived a catastrophic fire, right? And so it's kind of funny, like they're talking about how it survived, but they cut it down to know that. So what I do, kind of my field work for my dissertation was based on dendrochronology, which means dendro, it's a tree or whatever, chronology is time. So you're looking at tree rings.
Okay.
We use an increment core, so you can kind of drill into the tree using this like really small tube with a drill bit, kind of hollow drill bit, core into it. Then you can slip in this little spoon and kind of unwind it. And then you get this like kind of like pencil thin thing that shows every ring. And ideally you get to the center of it and then you can see how old the tree is. And what I'm trying to do is figure out how the tree growth relates to the climate at the time so we can get a better understanding of how trees are going to perform in the future under future climate scenarios.
Damn.
So that's what I do.
And so that burrow, that hole that you're drilling doesn't affect the tree.
That's what they say. I mean, they say it's
you're the scientist.
Well, so I guess, yeah, I'll say yes. Well, because like only on a tree, only the very, like the underneath the bark, there's the cambium, and that's just the living area. Okay. All the wood inside the tree is dead. So really you're only kind of, it's not alive. It's not necessarily rotten, right? But there's some...
The only thing that's alive is the bark?
And the very inside of the bark. And that's what's kind of growing.
So it's kind of like a snake that sheds its skin, but the skin stays on.
In reverse.
In reverse. Yeah, okay.
A tree is like a reverse snake. That's true.
I'm glad we established that.
Yeah.
That's insane. I did not know that, man.
Yeah. So you're really only like piercing its ear, essentially.
Okay. Yeah, so any woodpecker that goes to town on it is fucking it up way worse than you are.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like I thought I was going to have to get permits to do my own tree course on public land. And it's pretty hard to get a hold of who you have to talk to get a permit. Do you talk to the regional experimental forester? Do you talk to the ranger station there? People in the federal government in resource management are kind of notorious for not necessarily getting back to you right away. Finally, I get a hold of the person. I'm looking at all these permits I have to fill out. You know, you have to tell them exactly where you're going to go, what you're going to do. They have to go out and survey it and check out what's up. They have to make sure it's not already a research plot. They charge you money to do it, and I'm like, oh, fuck. So I finally like call up the lady. I'm like, I want to do all this stuff. Do I need a permit? And she's like, no. You're what? It's like you're it's like the same as if you accidentally scraped the tree. And also, no one's going to be out there. Yeah. It's not like there's somebody checking you. We don't have any sort of budget for that. Mm-hmm. That'll never happen. So
if you go somewhere and you see some huge old tree and you see a burrow in it, it's probably somebody similar to you in your profession that has taken that core sample out to try to figure out how old it is. You would never see the hole. You would never see it, and it would fill up with pitch like within an hour. Oh wow!
So
okay,
because it's like not even as wide as a pen. Huh? And you drill it in there,
and then you pull it out, and you've got that. It's just a long piece of sawdust, essentially.
Oh, it's a solid piece. If you did it right, I mean, sometimes they fall apart. Sometimes you get a burr on the end of your bore, and that makes it get all weird and twisted. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you hit a rot pocket, and it causes all sorts of problems. But ideally, you get like maybe a foot of tree. I was working in western junipers, which are a fucking pain in the ass to core. Mm-hmm. There's a reason people don't really study them. Like, for instance, there's this thing called the International Tree Ring Data Bank, where other people who have done similar studies upload their data for people to do like a meta-analysis or whatever. Ponderosa pine, there's over 1,000 studies that are uploaded. Western juniper, there's like 16. So like, A, it has no commercial value. B, people just want to cut it down, and C, it's really dense and old and hard and rotten in the center. So it's really hard to work with. Nobody cares. But it's been expanding like crazy in its range the last 150 years. And what makes it kind of anomalous is that the idea is under climate change, most plant species are going to move up in elevation to get to the range that they're used to because it's going to be colder up higher. And they're going to move north in latitude because it's colder. And western juniper is kind of doing the opposite. It's moving down from the top of the mountain into the valleys.
Which is good or bad?
I mean, see, now we're getting into that. The answer would be it depends. It depends on what what's good to you and what's bad to you, right? It would be, if you're a rancher, it's bad. If you care about sage grouse, it's bad. If you care about shrub ecosystems, it's probably bad. If you care, I think it's probably bad.
Okay, but look at it from the perspective of a regular human. Like what? So the ultimate goal is to live, right? To not completely destroy everything so much that we end up, if you go to the equator, it's 300 degrees. Okay,
Yeah.
that's worst case scenario, right? So
Okay.
we're all just trying to live. So what is the best scenario? I guess there's too many things.
No, you have a good point. I think that's kind of what I'm trying to figure out for my third chapter. And what my lab that I'm a part of is called the SPA lab, Soil, Plant, and Atmosphere. And something we're very interested in right now is what's called natural climate solutions. So there's a lot of people who want to use like technology to save the planet. And they think like we can come up with some sort of thing that sucks pollution out of the air and turns it into diamonds, right? And like, okay, show me how to do that. I don't know. Nobody can do that yet.
Yeah.
The other one is like, okay, that might be part of it, but who makes money off that?
Yeah.
Right? It's kind of like a lot of people are skeptical of that sort of approach because it's like paying someone to clean up their own mess in a sense. So natural climate solutions would be like, what can we do how can we manage the planet to maximize its sequestering carbon to the best its ability? You know, what can we do to make our forests sequester carbon, make our farms sequester carbon? You know, there's things like, it turns out if you feed cows some seaweed, they don't fart nearly as much and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But so one of the things I'm trying to figure out is how does this expansion of juniper, is it a carbon gain or is it a carbon loss? And then what time frame you look at that matters too.
Well, yeah, there's people arguing that if you just plant more trees, who cares how many combustible engine cars we drive, right? Because the trees essentially eat the carbon, right?
Yeah. They like we breathe air and take the oxygen, release carbon dioxide. They do the opposite.
Exactly.
The problem is every plant, everything burns down, right? What we've been talking about. So really, if you're talking about long-term carbon storage, you have to talk about storing it in the soil. You have to think about plants releasing carbon into the ground, either with their roots or with something else, and then they die, and that stays in the soil because that can stay around for thousands and thousands of years.
So you're saying that there's carbon in the air that is making it difficult on the ozone layer, but you're saying all the carbon that the trees ingest when they die goes into the soil, and that carbon stays in the soil? It
can. So we're trying to figure out how. So we have fossil fuels, right? We're burning them, CO2, methane, O2, all these things that go into the air. The trees can then pull that out of the air, turn it into wood, a big one is actually grasses, and they put the carbon. There's pictures. You have a grass. It's this tall, but its root system will be like 10 feet tall, going down. And depending on the situation, that carbon, right? Carbon is just like the plant material. How we manage it so that the roots can either stay and be like solid carbon that gets sequestered, or it can rot and go back into the atmosphere.
I'm picturing a tree in a lab, a tree, one tree, and then a second tree, and then you pump a ton. You just start up a car and just let it run for a year.
Yeah.
Okay, and then in the other one, it's just like chilling, looking at the stars.
So which one's
Everything's
bigger?
Great. Well, so what is the difference between the two? You're saying the root system is going to be bigger on the one that's absorbing all the extra carbon?
So this is called, they do this experiment all the time. So a tree, I don't know if you actually did your exact scenario if it would work, but you can put CO2 in there, and it's what's called, you get as a CO2 fertilization effect. So that plant, there's some pretty famous pictures, plant with a little bit more, plant with a little bit more CO2, and they just grow crazy more with CO2. So that's what's weird to people is
the tree will grow more.
Way more.
And that's bad.
No. So this is where it gets a little tricky, right? But that's also in a lab. That's not in nature.
Yeah. Well, all they got to do is go to New York City and go to upstate, and the tree should be fucking huge compared to Omaha, Nebraska, right?
Well, yeah, I don't know if you've been to Omaha. There's not a lot of trees there. I mean, the corn. But there's a lot more a lot more elements to that in the real world. Mm-hmm. So that's what I'm trying to do with one of my chapters is figure out how CO2 levels, they've gone up, from 200 parts per million to 400 parts per million in the last 50 years or something like that. And the increase, carbon has changed over the history of time. It's never increased this fast. Temperatures never increase this fast. Mm-hmm. Precipitation variation has never increased this rapidly. Mm-hmm. So we're trying to figure out what that increase in CO2 level, what that does to tree ring growth and what it does to the response to changes in precipitation and temperature.
And that's just one part of the problem. You could fix that. You could eliminate the carbon emissions into the atmosphere. Uh-huh. And then you're still going to have exponential growth in the human population. You're going to have to find a way to generate more food for people to eat. There's going to have to be more land for people to live on. It's exponential. It just grows and grows and grows. And I've gotten into this with other people. I'm not a proponent of killing people or letting people die or smushing the human experience. But because we've gotten so good at allowing people to live longer, there's all these people everywhere. And we've gotten better at guaranteeing the infant mortality rate. It used to be 100 years ago, you were lucky if you made it to 10. Mm-hmm. You'd get married and you'd have 8 kids with one woman, and 2 of them would survive past 10. All these people were not making it. And now we've got all these ways of guaranteeing that humans grow and live and continue. And so it's an exponential problem across many environments because you've got so many people that can live to 80 years old, and they're eating and they're buying clothes and they're living in apartments and they're driving cars, and it just continues to expand.
Mm-hmm. So that's a very good point, and I have a couple good things to keep in mind with that I want to, if anybody brings up kind of the human population is the big problem kind of thing, because that happens a lot. Mm-hmm. I see people who are trying to say that. That's like a very logical kind of conclusion or observation to have from somebody that's thinking about stuff like that. And in environmental studies, one big equation that they have, it's that impact, a person's individual impact on the environment is equal to population times technology times affluence. So population's only part of it, right? If you were to measure our individual carbon impact. You can, there's web pages you can go to where you type in how many miles you go, how much meat you eat, how often you fly, how often do you own a train, how big's your house, all that stuff. And it'll tell you like how many Earths there would need to be able to sustain if everybody had your lifestyle.
Sure.
So there's a lot of people who don't live like we do, and then there's also a lot of people who probably produce way more carbon than we do. So it's not necessarily too many people. It's how people are living that's important. But so I guess keep that in mind. And then the other point I wanted to make, now I forgot.
It's all right.
So
it's all right. I'm just considering like what we're doing is unsustainable.
Yeah.
As a human. As a human experience, man. Like,
yeah. People don't think about it. I mean, there's
I mean, just even this, like you and I drinking this out of an aluminum can, this is not good. But we do it.
I mean, aluminum's recyclable.
It is, but there's still a negative effect to it.
Yeah, that's
They had to produce it. They had to can it. We're going to have to drive it somewhere. They're going to have to recycle it. That, you know what I mean? Like it's all stepping stones to a bigger issue.
Yeah.
Like,
I think if you want to get into it though, there's probably like more important bad things you and I could do. Probably like meat is probably the worst. We'd eat a lot less meat. Yes.
Okay. So maybe, hopefully you know a lot about this. I don't know. We'll find out. The argument right now amongst some circles is that we eliminate factory farms, which factory farms are fucking horrible. I've seen videos. Like that is terrible, terrible stuff. But the argument is to replace that entire food chain with like Beyond Meat or Impossible Meat or whatever those things are. But I don't fully understand how they get the ingredients to make that stuff. I believe it's soybean based.
And peas, I think.
Okay, so if that replaced all of the cattle that we are currently slaughtering to feed people, we need a ridiculous amount of farmland.
Perfect question. Let me clear this up for you right away.
Do it.
So if you want a burger, right, you got to feed that cow. Pretty much I'm going to guesstimate on this from what I've heard. Say to turn most of our like farmland that we have in the Midwest, we grow soybean and grain and stuff like that to feed to cows to turn into meat. So I think the equation is for like every hamburger you'd have to feed that cow 14 Impossible Burgers.
Okay.
Because it's just not very efficient, right? So we would need like 14 times less land to have Impossible Burgers than to have actual burgers. And Impossible Burgers are pretty good. I've definitely had Impossible Burgers that are better than burgers that I've had.
Really?
Oh, yeah. I've had some pretty bad burgers, and I've cooked some pretty good Impossible Burgers.
Huh.
And especially if you go to like Carl's Jr. or something, they're Impossible Burgers. There's no way to tell. It's not. You'd feel less bad.
Carl's Jr. has Impossible Burger?
And it's good. It tastes good. I like it. And I don't feel gross. Like if I eat a Carl's Jr. burger, I like it when I eat it, but I feel pretty gross afterwards.
You had a noticeable difference in the way you felt afterwards.
Yeah, I didn't feel as bad. I didn't get diarrhea.
You didn't go to the shower at Oxbow. What if you did what if you did the Pepsi test between the two? Do you think you could tell the difference?
Like between a Carl's Jr. Impossible Burger and a Carl's Jr.
Sure.
Yeah, I think I could tell the difference, and I think I would like the Impossible Burger better.
What is different?
It's way less greasy.
Yeah?
Yeah, and it, like, to me, a really good burger is only maybe 20% of it's the patty, right? There's lettuce, tomato, onion, bun, sauce, all that stuff matters a lot more than cheese than just the patty. So a burger to me when it's bad, too greasy. Soaks through. I don't know, to me the worst is like a big fat piece of meat with just like two greasy pieces of bread.
Yeah.
The best is like perfectly crispy on the outside, tender on the inside, patty, smoky, grill marks, lettuce, onion, tomato, hot sauce, cheese. like good bun.
I'm getting hungry.
Yeah, me too. We might have to go to Burgerville or something after this. But
so what is the argument then? What are you saying? Impossible Burger versus traditional burger. You said it takes 14 times?
I think that's like the last number I heard. I mean, I'm probably wrong, I would say, but I don't think I'm that wrong. So I think that's the order of magnitude.
So are you saying that it's more efficient to continue slaughtering cattle?
No, the other way. So I think the number I'm talking about, I guess, is like, say you had a acre of land, right? You could either feed 14 people on that land from the vegetables.
Or feed one cow.
Gotcha. And then that cow could feed one person.
Sure.
So that's what it kind of comes down to.
So what do you think then? I mean, if you could hypothesize or predict the future and you could say, this is what we're going to do you think it would be more efficient and better for the environment to relegate cattle to, there a couple people have them in Montana, and everyone in Iowa who used to grow grain to feed the cattle is now growing soybeans and peas to make Impossible Burgers?
Yeah, I think I don't think we have to like outlaw meat completely or anything like that. I think it's got to be way more of a luxury. Mm-hmm. I don't think people need. And I mean, I know I've experienced this in my life, but my girlfriend's also a vegan, so I kind of have to be vegan sometimes. But I still love to eat meat, but I don't eat it for every meal. I don't have to eat a half pound of burger for everything.
Mm-hmm. I think that's the issue over the last 50, 60, 70 years is it became a thing that was in every single meal. You ate it with breakfast. You ate it with lunch. You ate it with dinner. I don't know that that's fully necessary, but you need to get the protein. Mm-hmm. And it will change the physical composition of a human being if we don't continue to get the same amount of protein.
Yeah.
And so I don't know what amount of protein is in an Impossible Burger.
I bet you it's comparable to meat. And the weird thing about like when you're talking about factory farms and stuff like that is there's this kind of myth that the meat we're getting from situations like that is good for us. I mean, those cows are like pumped full of antibiotics. They're pumped full of growth hormones. That stuff stays in there, and that makes you like more unhealthy, right? That's got to lead to super strains of bacteria. That's got to lead to the weird hormone issues that people are having. So I would say eat less meat, but eat way better meat. Eat like a really good steak once a week and eat some other crappy meat every other day, and then try to eat some good stuff,
Well, that's the interesting thing is like, I wonder if they will eventually be able to turn that protein supplement into a drink, and then you won't need to eat.
Yeah, but I like to eat.
I do too.
It's like my favorite thing.
It is awesome.
I love to cook too.
I do too. It's a thing that you have to do every day, and it can fluctuate slightly based on how you do it. So for me, like I never make anything the same way twice.
Yeah, me neither.
I'm always like refining it just a little bit. And so it's an extra activity that you're doing every day. And I agree. Like if you didn't have to eat, I'd be pissed. I'd be like, I want to do that. Like that's fun.
Yeah, and it's fun to cook for people. It's fun to grill meat. I mean, that's the most fun to take something and use your grill and cook it for a long time and make it just so delicious.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's way more fun than cooking pasta.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, there's a challenge to it.
Yeah.
Right? It's like medieval,
Yeah, and it can go wrong in so many ways.
I know.
You can burn it, you can undercook it, you can overcook it, you can in an instant, right? You're cooking a bunch of chicken thighs, you look away for a minute and they're all ruined.
Yeah.
So,
Well, and it's one thing to go to a nice restaurant and have somebody else cook the fucking best steak of your life for you. But if you go home and you cook a $9 steak yourself, like
You just save $50.
You save $50 and you're more impressed because you did it.
Oh, I know how to do it too. I got a cast iron. My place right now has a gas stove.
Yeah.
I can get it really hot. There's a really nice butcher shop in Eugene, Long's, and they got really good meat. You know, they got it where it's like you can get grass-fed or you can get grass-fed and grain-finished. You know where it's from and stuff like that. And it's like I did a little taste test for myself, and I think sirloin, top sirloin's the best.
Yeah?
Yeah, I did sirloin versus New York strip versus ribeye, blind, and sirloin's the cheapest, and I like it. And I had a butcher friend, and she was like, sirloin's what we know that's the key. But I do a cast iron, right? So all the fat's retained, so I don't need that fatty of a meat.
Yeah.
If you're barbecuing it, then maybe you do want something a little higher fat content.
It's pretty cool that there are different ways to cook it to get what you're going for.
Yeah.
You know?
Definitely.
Many years ago, there's just like, put it over the campfire and let's see what happens. But
I think the worst I've ever seen, I saw somebody microwave a package full of hamburger meat one time when I was doing field work for my master's, Heart Mountain National Antelope Refuge at the bunkhouse there. And this guy was supposed to be cooking for his crew. He has like 6 pounds of hamburger, still in the styrofoam, still in the saran wrap. Puts it in the microwave. And everybody's like, I'm not going to eat this shit. So he goes, fine, I'll eat it. And he eats it like a pig out of a trough. That's the grossest thing. But
did he die?
no, he was a big guy. He's Levi. He was an interesting dude. He was it was interesting because he wasn't in my crew at all. We would come every other week and be there for 2 weeks. His crew had to stay there for the whole summer. They were bird people. They watched the sage-grouse there, and every year I did 3 years there. Those bird crews would just go insane over the summer.
What does that mean, bird crew?
They're looking at sage-grouse, which is a kind of on the fence, maybe endangered, maybe not, depending on how you look at it, kind of chicken that lives out in the sagebrush, and they would measure them and kind of look at how many survived. They'd go out and tag them, put radio collars on them, see where they moved, go out, count how many chicks there are, stuff like that. And it's crazy too because they'd realize like halfway through they're going out to these nests to look at these sage-grouse. They're getting followed by coyotes. The coyotes are going and eating the ones they're trying to measure. They found out too that the radio collars they put on them, they have a little solar panel. Sage-grouse are cryptids, so they're really, really camouflaged. People think they're really stupid because you could step on one. Like, that thing's so dumb. But it's like that's its strategy. It hides. But this collar, everyone they put collars on, it just reflects to, like, hawks. The hawks could figure it out, and they're going and killing them all. And it's just like, I'm exaggerating a little bit, but by observing these birds, they were increasing their death rate. But then they're reporting on how many are surviving and dying. So
they're directly influencing. Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. There's some scientists, Oppenheimer, maybe. You can't observe something without influencing it.
Well, exactly. Unless you're like putting a camera on it somehow. But even that would influence it.
That's what the next guy did. The smarter guy. He's like, let's put some cameras up there.
I got a GoPro 7.
Yeah, I mean, but man, that bird crew is crazy. Speaking of GoPros, the first year I go there, there's this big controversy. One of the crew leads was a master's student. She quit because somebody else had taken their GoPro, put it in her tent to videotape her and her boyfriend having sex with like the official GoPro for the experiment.
Oh, shit.
So they were gone. That's like the first day I show up.
She quit, but did the person who filmed her get in trouble?
Yeah, they got fired.
Yeah, okay.
So those bird people were just nuts, man. They're like, they hire these people, they hire them late, they're in the middle of nowhere, they're not like the cream of the crop, I guess. Like if you're a bird person, you're going to try to go to the rainforest or the Antarctic or you're going to study penguins or something crazy. You're not going to study some sort of weird chicken that can't survive in Eastern Oregon.
Sounds like a good job for me.
I mean, yeah. You could do it. You could do it. And then they got to get up at 3 a.m. every morning and go out to be able to measure how many chicks there are in these nests when the sun rises. And my crew just goes out and I just like see how, I clip a bunch of grass and see how much it weighs.
Yeah.
And, avoid scorpions. And it's fun. But I get to go back, after 10 days and go back to Corvallis at the time.
Yeah.
But, man, you see some weird people. I got to tell you this story. This was on my list of stories I wanted to tell you. So we're out there. This is when I was doing my master's. I had my own crew, no boss. And Heart Mountain National Antelope Refuge has a really cool hot springs. And it's right by the camp that we stay. So there's nothing better after measuring plants all day than going into the hot springs.
Yeah.
But I don't know if you've been to hot springs, but it's a grab bag of who you're going to meet out there.
Yeah.
So I'm there with my crew. And there's a family there, and it's kind of a built-up hot spring, so it's got like some walls around it, and it's deep, and you can hang out in it, and you're like all buoyant and weird because it's full of minerals, and it's just really nice. And his family's there, and we're there, and we hear some guy like hooting, woo, doo, 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 doo. And he shows up, and there's this guy. He's got like half a bottle of Jim Beam in his hand, young, like mid-20s kind of guy. Jumps into the hot spring, fully clothed, shoes on and everything. And he's getting drunk, and I'm with my crew. I'm like, we got to help this guy. He's trying to give us the whiskey to drink. Let's help him with this whiskey because I think he's going to die. The family leaves, and this guy's just telling us stories, and he's like pretending to play the saxophone and spitting in everybody's face and falling into the hot springs and then coming back up and getting mad at everybody. We're not saving him. You didn't save my life. Nobody cares about me. Telling us his name. I don't want to repeat his name, but I remember it because it's the same name as another guy I went to school with, as Brian Sparks. And he's saying, I work for the Forest Service and I'm a rec tech and I make this amount and I like study this amount of area. And I don't know. He's just going off. And he's like, he's on one. He's saying, tomorrow I'm going to go to the place and I'm going to mine all these gemstones and blah, 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 blah. And we're like, fuck, this guy's fucked up. And it's getting dark. And we're like, we want to go. He's like, okay, see you guys. I'll be fine. And we're like, we can't leave this guy here. He's going to drown. And we can't leave him in here because it gets almost freezing every night in the desert there, even in the summertime. And it's about a mile walk to the campground from the hot springs. So we're like, we can't leave him to walk back because he's going to freeze to death. Yeah. We're not supposed to put people into state rigs either, but I bend the rules and I say, let's load this guy up. We know he's in campground 7A because he's been screaming about it for the last 2 hours. We put him in there, we'll take him there. We load him in, take him there. We see his tent, blah, blah, blah. He can't walk at this point. So me and the guy Neil, we get him, walk him to his tent. He's like, I'm fine. You can let me out here. Instantly falls out. Just falls down onto the grass. Like, okay, we can't do this. We got to get him into his tent. So we open up his tent, put him in there. He's like, I'm fine. It's like, fuck, this guy's soaking wet. He's going to die. So, like, there's his bag of clothes. So let's open it up. Let's take his wet clothes off him. Let's just put something on him and put him in bed. Open up the bag. All that's in there, women's panties.
That's it?
One like nightie too. So we take his clothes off, we put this like lingerie on him, and we put him in there, and we're like, okay, and he's passed out. Next day we drive by to see if he's there. 7 a.m., like he said, he left. He had gone to go mining. Next trip we're out there. We're at this other place called Lookout Point. We meet some guy, another weirdo too. He's like, those guys that wear sweatpants and they pull them up too high so you can see their moose knuckle, whatever. And he had like socks with sandals, and he's really weird. And we're talking to him. Turns out he's a rec tech for the Forest Service. Turns out that job just means they go to recreation sites and clean the bathrooms. Okay, I've been there, done that. Ask him about this Brian Sparks guy. Do you know him? He's like, yeah, I know him, but he's not a rec tech. He's the volunteer youth coordinator.
Oh, no.
So it's like, whose fucking panties were those?
Oh, no.
Yeah.
He stole a bunch of fucking...
I don't know.
Underage girl panties.
They didn't look like it, though. They looked like a big ladies. But
and why would that be the only thing in the backpack? Was he just going to wear the same clothes the whole time?
I don't know. And his tent, he had a pretty nice big tent. He had an air mattress. He had like a down comforter and not a sleeping bag. And then a duffel bag full of kind of like lacy women's panties.
He knows how to party.
I guess. He did. I mean, that guy put it down. He drank a lot of Jim Beam. I think he was in like some sort of relationship trouble, if I remember correctly. So maybe they were his exes.
I could believe that.
Yeah. But
so I feel like there's going to have to be a part 2, part 3. We're coming close to the end. I try to wrap them up around 2 hours.
All right.
But I guess let's go towards music.
Okay. Sweet.
What do you play?
I would say I try to kind of play everything, but I'm pretty bad at, I'm not, I can play some chords, and I got a ukulele. I can play that a little bit better than a guitar.
But what did you play when you were in a band?
Okay, cool. So I had, when I was like 2005 through 2008, me and my buddy Nick founded this band, Reptilian Civilian, and I was the front man.
I think I have a piece of vinyl.
Really?
I think you gave one to me or to Farger or something. I think I have like a 7-inch.
That thing's a collector's item now.
Dude, it's worth millions. I'm going to hang on to it.
Well, let me look. Let me see if it's still there.
I'm pretty fucking sure I have one of those 7s. Because is that something you released?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so thanks for asking me about that, because what I wanted to do was I wanted to actually plug this. So, like I said before, I'm moving into this place with my girlfriend, so I'm going through stuff. I find some old recordings that I thought were lost, and I just put them actually onto my Bandcamp, which is just, smash the like button and subscribe, and scroll down into the comments, and you'll see it's right here, right now, right? Is that how you do it? It's the Schyler Band.bandcamp.com, and that's where I put my recordings that I make.
Okay.
But I just decided I'm going to release these Reptilian Civilian recordings onto that.
Okay.
And they're a lot better than the stuff that I do myself.
Okay.
Because they were like, we had somebody else record it, we had somebody else play drums, guitar, and bass, and I was the singer and I wrote the songs, and we had a really good show, but I don't know.
I don't know if it is this way for you, but like I feel like some of the stuff that I did 10, 15, 20 years ago, I go back and I listen to it after a long time, and I'm like, it's actually not that bad.
Yeah.
Like you appreciate it when you did it when you were 20, 22, 24, whatever. You're just like, yeah, fuck yeah, doing it, whatever. And then you get 15 years of life and experience, and you go back and you're like, I don't know if this is the same for you, but like that is a different person.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
But in a good way. You're like, man, I can't believe I made that.
Yes. When I think about Reptilian Civilian, which we'll just call them Rep Civ now, because now there's another band called Reptilian Civilian that took our name.
Copyright infringement?
Yeah, we didn't copyright it. And they're like a weird death metal band, so it's kind of funny, too. Because if you're listening to that and it's like, rah, 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 you're at the wrong band camp. But I used to think like conspiracy theories and stuff like that were kind of funny and were kind of cool as a joke. And a lot of Reptilian Civilian songs were about that. Like the name itself is based on this idea that there's like reptilian alien shapeshifters on Earth and they're controlling the government. I just thought that stuff was so ridiculous and so fringe that it'd be interesting to kind of sing about some of that stuff or whatever. Now, in this world, 2021, that's what the people that stormed the Capitol actually believe. So
you could have been leading a revolution.
I could have been the QAnon shaman or whatever.
Yeah.
So it's a little embarrassing, but also it's like, I guess maybe it's important to think about like what you say matters, I guess. And when I was 21 and 22, I didn't think that. I thought like people care too much and what people really need is to have a good time and let loose. And I mean, that's still probably true, but
It was a different time.
it was.
Can you imagine? Like, I cannot put myself in the brain that existed in 2005 compared to now. Man, so much has changed in that 15, 16 years. And the way I look at it now is I don't care. I don't care anymore. It's like we're only going to get 80 years if we're lucky. No one's going to care when we're dead. If you have kids or grandkids or a wife or whatever, they're going to miss you. No one's going to care. You get relegated to history. You're just a thing that used to be. No one cares. So it's just like you might as well put out whatever you can when you're thinking it or when you're experiencing it and just let it go. Because who cares, man? At the end, who cares?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it's tough though, because maybe I'm having the opposite effect. And I guess what I would say is like, if thinking that way makes you do stuff, then that's awesome. Like I don't know. You know how many times like I think like, man, a podcast would be so cool, it'd be fun, but you don't do it, and then it's like, oh, you're doing it. It's like that's very admirable, and like,
Well, thank you.
I really also especially like your approach to it and the content you're doing, because it's so genuine and it's so like hearing these stories Farg Dog's talking about, and it's like, man, these are people I wish I could hang out with right now. I wish I was at my parents' house and they were over at Aunt Kathy's house and I could just go over there.
Yeah.
And you can't. So that type of content, to me, its stock has skyrocketed over the last year. So yes, people need to create more stuff and put it out there, because it's like, I don't know, like the recordings on my Bandcamp, we recorded them and we took it pretty serious, and we played a lot of shows in town and we did some tours, but we never knew how to like try to get our stuff out there. And that's maybe one of the only regrets I have in my life.
Well, and that's the other thing, is like not wanting to have any regrets. I'm reading a book right now by Trevor Noah, from The Daily Show.
Yeah.
He's got a really incredible story. He grew up in South Africa, and it discusses apartheid and white neighborhoods, colored neighborhoods, and black neighborhoods, and his interaction with all of them, because he is a colored kid. His mom, I believe his mom was black and his dad was white. So he never really fit in anywhere. But he has this incredible passage. It's the title of a chapter, and it just talks about regret. And he says, regret, you can quantify failure, you can quantify rejection. You can't quantify regret, because regret is the thing that you don't know what would have happened. It's the lottery ticket you didn't buy. It's the girl you didn't ask out. It's the party you didn't go to. It's the job interview that you were scared of. Like, who cares?
Yeah.
Like, just do it, man.
I've recently, in the last couple of years, I heard something where it was like, pretend that you're not living your life, but you're observing your life after you're died.
That's cool.
And then do what you want. I don't know, it's something about like, I had a thing with my cousin, the same guy that I almost did that shit prank with. And we kind of didn't like each other. And I saw him a couple years ago in Portland. He had moved back to town. He was really down on the dumps. And I thought, like, this might be the last time I'm ever going to see this guy. And so I was like, I've always hated you, right? And he was like, well, I don't blame you. I made it myself a pretty easy target. And then we had like a real heart to heart.
Yeah.
And I learned so much about him, about why he was such kind of a type of person that I didn't like. And I love the guy now. And it's just like, it was so necessary. And if I wouldn't have thought about that thing, like maybe I'll never see him again, what do I actually want to say to him?
Yeah.
It never would have happened.
Yeah, there's this really awesome podcast that I listened to, and the guest was Jesse Itzler, and he said he started to reevaluate the way that he looked at his life, and he looked at it like his parents were super old and they were about to die, and they were going to die in 5 years or whatever. And so he took that age gap or that amount of time as normal people would view it in, my parents are going to die in 5 years. And he viewed it as, I'm going to see them maybe once a year. So I get to see my parents 5 more times.
Damn.
And then they're going to be dead. And I don't think a lot of people view things that way. You don't know the last time you're going to see somebody. But if you try to pretend that maybe it's the last time, maybe you'll act differently. And the next time you see your parents, you're like, you know, my parents are in their late 50s, early 60s. Maybe I see my parents 20 more times, and then they're dead. Instead of viewing that as they have 20 more years,
it's just the amount of...
It's the amount of times I get to see them. And so that changes the way that I interact with them. So...
Do you think, though, that might put more pressure on you?
Maybe. I don't know.
That's what's tough with me is my dad's had a lot of health issues over the last, I don't know, I guess 10 years now. Mm-hmm. And he's beat cancer a lot. And now I'm really nervous with COVID because of his kind of compromised state. Like, yeah. I'm afraid to see him, mm-hmm. but then also I think, because I don't want to like kill him.
Yeah,
I don't want to give him COVID.
Yeah.
But then I also don't want to not see him. But also I don't talk to him about that stuff. And yeah. It's weird because I don't want to, maybe I'm afraid to bring it up because it seems too serious, but.
Yeah. It's real, man. I go and see my grandma every single summer since I was born. So 36 years I've gone to see my grandma.
Where's that at?
It's in Lakeview, California.
Okay.
6 hours from here. It's right where California meets Oregon.
That's in California, though?
She lives in California, like 100 feet or 100 yards into California.
You know,
it's called New Pine Creek.
Heart Mountain's right by Lakeview.
She probably knows what that is.
You should go check it out next time. Go to the hot springs.
Yeah. Okay. Nice. Well, she lives down there, and she's got a simple life. You know, she sees us once a summer, and we've gone down there for Christmas a few times. But like, that's the big trip. I take my kids down there. I used to take my wife when I was married. Like, that's a big thing. Last summer I couldn't do it, and she has an iPad, and she texts me, and she's like, I would rather have you come here and see me and die than be lonely and not see you for a year. And I'm like, that is insane, man. Like, that's what people are dealing with right now. Like, what you're talking about is like making the decision whether or not to see someone because you're worried about infecting them. And they're dying themselves because they're so starved of attention.
Yeah.
It's a crazy time.
Yeah. Definitely. I don't know. And it's like the compromise would be you go and you social distance and wear masks, but I can't. When I visited my parents over Christmas and I couldn't do that.
Mm-hmm. Do they still live out there?
Yeah, they live, now they're Ron's neighbor instead of Kathy's neighbor. But
oh, yeah, because he lives there now.
Yeah.
So do you actually live in Eugene?
Mm-hmm. I live in Eugene. I love Eugene. It's fun. Happy to.
Did you drive all the way up here?
Yeah.
Thank you. I didn't know that, man.
You don't even know how. What was hilarious was driving up, and I'm just loving the drive. I mean, granted, it's a beautiful day out, right? And like the clouds are clearing, and the sky is so blue, and there's the mountains, there's the valley. And then on NPR, they're talking about how people now are just going on drives in the morning trying to find traffic jams because they miss it.
Yeah.
And I hate that drive from Eugene to Portland. And I had a blast just doing it.
Cool. I didn't know that. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I want to support that. I like what you're doing, and I've had a lot of fun listening to your podcast. So
cool. Hopefully
people will like listening to this one.
Yeah.
And I want to say one last thing. I think we've got to be pretty close to being done.
We can wrap it up.
Well, I mean, I could talk for hours, but I think I'll come back for another one.
I think you should come back.
So I wanted to plug again that I released my Reptilian Civilian Greatest Hits Volume 1. And I wanted to say one of the songs on it is called Beat Up Your Baby. and it's based on Farg Dog, our mutual friend. So I wanted to tell this story because it's funny. When he was like 2 or something, his brother Shane and Ron were just, I mean, those guys were relentless on Cody. They just beat him up nonstop. And I mean, right, Shane was national champion wrestler. Cody was something like that too. Ron was a big dude. And it was just like nonstop beating up Cody. And I guess the story goes, they would tell him like, you couldn't beat up anybody. You can never beat up anybody. We could beat you up. And he was really upset and sad. And one of Kathy's friends came over and she had a little baby. And Cody was so excited because he went up to the lady and he thought she was going to be so proud. And he said, I could beat up your baby. I could beat up your baby. So I wrote, I mean, the song is not about that at all, but just that line, I guess, that turned into a lyric for a song.
You remember that or somebody told you?
I mean, this was even, I think, before I knew Cody because I met him when I was 4.
Yeah.
But that's one of, Kathy loves to tell stories to me.
Yeah.
Just like Shane and Ron like to beat him up physically. I think everybody likes to beat him up emotionally a little bit. Like my cousin, he makes himself a target. So
Yeah.
what can you do? I mean, he did wear a dashiki for years, apparently.
Yeah.
Which I don't know.
Farg Dog, you gotta love him.
Yeah, totally. He's got a heart almost as big as he is.
Yeah, he does. He's a good guy.
Definitely. Love you, Farg Dog.
Yeah, Farg Dog.
Yeah, he talked you up a lot. I was almost apprehensive to do the podcast, so he pushed me over the edge.
I'm glad you came up. He was a very strong proponent of you. He told me for years, he's like, yeah, Schyler could read the newspaper when he was 3 years old.
He used to say, I'm so smart I could spell Oshkosh Bagosh. And I mean, I appreciate the sentiment, but I'm a horrible speller, so I don't think I could spell Oshkosh Bagosh.
You could read the newspaper at 3, but you couldn't spell.
I'm a horrible speller. But now you have, spell check, so it's fine.
Yeah,
but I don't like this. The application I was trying to fill out to move into this new house with my girlfriend, it's like I misspelled collie. Like, I don't know how, like if it doesn't have a red squiggly line underneath it, like I don't know how. I'm probably dyslexic or something.
English is hard.
It's so hard.
It's very, very ridiculous.
Yeah, there's no rules, and they say there's rules, right? You're I before E, except after C, blah, blah, blah. If you look at the spelling of my name, Schyler, Schyler, that makes no sense. And then Reis is Reis. That makes no sense. I was damned.
Well, yeah, what is that?
Reis, I think, so that's from my dad's dad. And if you look it up on genealogy.com, it means rice in German. It could mean someone that lived in like a scrubby area in Germany, or it could be the German last name for a Jewish cobbler. And that's what my great-great-great-grandpa was. Huh. So, interesting. I'll tell you the story about him some other time. But
cool.
So that's what it is.
I'm glad you came up, dude. I appreciate it.
Well, thanks. I had a blast. Anybody, I recommend you guys come
sign hang out, drink beers.
Yeah, you got to bring a 6-pack, though. That's the rule, apparently.
Apparently now.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, man.
Well, thanks.
Yep.
Oh, now let's pretend we're listening to that song I told you about, right? Isn't that how you, if you're...
I don't think anybody makes this long anyway.